Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a good first session in main stage. I am Lindsay Marshall. I'm the room captain for today in here. If I saw you yesterday, welcome back. If not, welcome. Thanks for joining us and taking the time. So today we are joined by two fantastic speakers. We have Daniel Bogdan and also Zsolt Burger from OTP Bank and Consortix. And they're going to give you a presentation on accelerating migration to SAS Intelligent Decisioning. So yeah, let's give them a warm welcome.
Hello everyone. I would like to invite you for an imaginary journey at the beginning, but just a very quick one. So imagine that you are sitting in your favorite restaurant, a fancy one. The lights are dim, soft jazzy music is playing, and you're enjoying every bite. But you don't have a clue that right behind those walls, the kitchen is a construction site. Drills buzzing, wires hanging, and it's a chaos. So that was the aim of our project as well, because you just don't notice anything out of that. We wanted to modernize our loan origination system. We have our old kitchen, the Real-time Decision Manager in SAS 9.4 on the left side. It's the old, but the trusted one. And we wanted to go to SAS Viya with Intelligent Decisioning, the shiny new one with all the new tools. But unfortunately, there was nothing in between, and that was our problem. That was what we wanted to solve, and we didn't have a recipe for that. So we tried to cook something for ourselves. But let's see what we were really up against. We have at least 2,700 decision flows, or decision campaigns, web services, whatever you call them, that we wanted to migrate. Not just update the system, but migrate these decision flows to the new system. And why? What was the reason behind that? The reason is that the software was outdated, because the version of the SAS Real-time Decision Manager what we were using was still based on Adobe Flash. Yes, that Flash. The Flash, which died officially in 2020. So during those times, and of course nowadays as well, it's not just outdated, it was basically a zombie. And then, of course, the time and the resources, because the whole system was created during years, at least 10 years. So if we would like to start it all from scratch, it would take thousands of people, thousands of man days, and of course we didn't have so much resources. That's why we wanted to create something else, a migration tool that could help us with that. The system itself is quite complex. Business logics, IT logics, embedded logics, product-specific logics, so really quite complex. It's not just something what you casually reboot on a Friday night. So also risk is coming from that because also financial and reputational risk can occur, whether we cannot migrate it quick and without any problems. But before we really go into the details, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Daniel Bogdan. I'm from OTP Bank, and me and my team are responsible for the loan origination system IT development. So we are cooking in the kitchen. And if I'm not dealing with legacy technology like Adobe Flash and how to migrate it, then I really love going spin fishing and playing on a digital saxophone. Not always good, but with lots of enthusiasm. But of course, I was not alone in this project, and my colleague who is standing next to me was the visionary of all these things. Please welcome Zsolt Burger.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Zsolt Burger, and I'm a solution architect at Consortix. I have been implementing SAS solutions for 24 years, mainly in the areas of data management, operational risk management, and decisioning. Over the years, I have picked up a few certifications that I'm proud of, some from SAS and some from Microsoft. All of them come handy at work. And just for fun, I'm also a certified fermentation technician. Some of you may wonder what it means, but well, I'm licensed to make soft drinks, vinegar, yeast, and beer. but only one of those is truly useful after work.
Just a quick spoiler, not the vinegar is the answer for that question. But let's go further. So, of course, we're not alone with Jolt in this project because companies were standing behind us. So we quickly would like to introduce our companies as well. As I just told you, I'm from OTP Bank. There's a bank in Hungary. Our headquarters is in Budapest, Hungary, but we are also market leaders in Serbia, Montenegro, as well as in Bulgaria. And some years ago, we have acquired a bank in Uzbekistan, so we are also in Central Asia now, with a workforce of over 40,000 employees, and we are serving at least 70 million customers. So out of these numbers, you can see that the stability is quite important for us, and that's why in this migration project, we also wanted to have a stable solution. But let's see our strategic partner, where Jolt is working, the Consortix Group.
Yeah, so at Consortix, we are a SaaS-focused partner for the Hungarian private sector and also a strategic partner across Europe. Our primary expertise is in implementing SaaS financial crime solutions around the world. And now let's see what the challenge was.
Yeah, so before we see the challenge, you have to understand our kitchen, where we were cooking and still cooking. So the system, what we are talking about, is a loan origination system. It is responsible also for the underwriting procedures. In terms of volume, we processes and disburses at least 1.5 billion USD in mortgage and in consumer loans. So it's a very important part in OTP Hungary. Regarding the scope, our system is behind the loan application. So if a client goes to the branch network and starts an application with the help of a colleague in the branch, or just opens the internet bank, mobile bank, then our application with the workflows and with the web services are behind. And it all ends with the disbursement. So when the clients just receive the money on their accounts and they are happy, and we are also happy because our procedure has just finished and hopefully it was a successful one. We have lots of integrations, just like a real kitchen, an important kitchen. So in the kitchen, we have to talk with suppliers, we have to talk with waiters, and as well with food critics. But our system is also connected to at least more than 30 systems, internal and external as well. We are receiving data from data warehouse, from credit bureau, and probably the most important free one are the front ends, who are hitting us with web services. And of course, the more web service requests are coming from the front ends, the more users are using the system. So we are happy, of course, for that. But it's a very big usage, and performance issues can occur. So performance is also a very important part in the system, because daily hundreds of thousands of web service calls are coming from various channels. So the system must be really stable and invisible to the customers. In case of business objectives, there are two things that are absolutely critical for us. The first is the availability, and of course, the risks are coming from that. This system is 24/7, so it must be available anytime. And it's not just because our customer expects that, but also our national bank in Hungary expects us to report every downtime, which means that to be available anytime is not just a nice to have function, it's a regulatory obligation. But if a system is down or is just low, we can easily lose customers. And of course, we don't want that, because our market is quite competitive. So every customer is key for us. And of course, with the risk mitigation that are coming from this, if you're losing customers, you will lose also money, so you will have financial problems. And if you are using a system which is down many times, or it is just outdated, compliance, operational, and IT security risk will also come. Our goal was very clear. We would like to mitigate this risk or eliminate them as much as possible, if we can. But let's see how we define the success criteria in this project. First of all, we wanted to have valid decision campaigns, which means that not just be able to run it in the Viya ID, but run in the same way and behave exactly in the same way, just like it was in the RTDM. The second is the consistency. As you can see, there are two eggs on the icons. So from outside, probably they look very similar, but we wanted to make sure that they are identical inside as well. That's why we wanted to have really the same web service responses from our new system. And last but not least, the maintenance. It is rather important for our developers because we didn't want our developers to relearn everything. We wanted to make them sure that the system can be maintainable later on as well. But let's see what is the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to spoil the ending, but it's pretty obvious that we have found the solution. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here. And the solution was a migration tool. But let's be honest, talking about a migration tool doesn't exactly light up the room. It takes something old, turns into something new, and that's it. Everyone moves on. But how we got there, that was a journey. And as they say, it's not the destination, it is the journey. Except when you have to modernize a 24/7 loan origination system, then it's very much the destination. So was our journey like a 20-course tasting menu at a 2-Michelin-star restaurant at Harbor Park, or rather a wide roller coaster ride at the theme park next door? You can tell me afterward. But it all started at 2015 when OTP Bank and SAS Hungary started to implement this loan origination system Daniel mentioned. Not just the decisioning part, but the whole backend was implemented in RTDM. And it worked. It was real-time, it was stable, and it was built on Adobe Flash. By 2019, the system had grown to over 1,000 decision campaigns and 1,500 components like data processes, Groovy codes, and rule flows. It was massive, but it was based on a technology that headed to the same retirement home as Internet Explorer, and at that time, without an HTML5 version or a migration tool, and the end of life of Flash was approaching. So a colleague and I sat down to estimate how much would it take to rebuild everything on the new platform, SAS Intelligent Decisioning. And the result, over 10,000 man days, 10,000. Could we go back to the customer with that number? No, they would have thrown us out of the window. This wasn't just any customer, this was our largest customer and our biggest deal. So yes, we panicked for several months. We tried everything, escalating, emailing, begging, but nothing. But one day, panic turned into something else. Maybe determination, maybe mind-unhinged optimism. I don't know, but one day I said, I know how RTDM works inside out, and I can recreate what the UI does inside SAS ID with API calls. So maybe there is a chance that we could create a tool that does the migration for us. So at the end of 2019, after a month of planning and furious programming, R2DS2 was born. A working concept of a migration tool that transforms RTDM nodes into RTDM decisions into DS2 nodes in ID. And it also came with a thick recipe book, a feasibility study. Why? Because we wanted to get confirmation from the intelligent decisioning dev team that our idea wasn't complete nonsense. And well, yeah, a long and boring documentation in IT makes everything look more legit. And it also helps us to share the idea with the community. So I had to analyze the differences between the two systems thoroughly and document a solution for every of them. And the first big difference between the two systems is the different communication protocol. It's like if the waiters would be speaking a different language. For that, we need a new element that does the translation for us. That's Apache Camel. And not only just the language, but the terms in the recipes have also changed. For that, the migration tool has to compile the old terms to the new ones. Some cooking methods cannot be used in the new kitchen, like Groovy codes, so we have to outsource them. And for that, a standalone Groovy engine is needed. The difference between the lengths of the variable names can be easily handled by the migration tool, although it makes the code a little bit less readable. Not only just the language has changed, but the grammatical rules. And filler words cannot be left out anymore, so the migration tool has to handle that as well. The difference between the data types, especially the date-related ones, those has to be handled by our translator Apache Camel. And in ID, the whole decision code is in DS2. That's a big advantage because we are fully control what it does. That helps us a lot. And also the generic custom functions available are helping us to mimic the behavior of the RTDM functions in ID. So after I wrote a documentation about this, after I wrote this, more than a year later, and after the first customer realized at the beginning of 2021 that Adobe Flash was indeed laid to rest, the intelligent decisioning community quickly needed to find a solution. And what the solution was? Yes, R2DS2. They found my documentation of it. And with my support, they created a tool that helps customers to visually migrate RTDM decisions to ID. For some of the customers, that was great. But for our mammoth, for the system like our mammoth in OTP Bank, it wouldn't have been enough. It wouldn't have filled a hole in its tooth. So let's quickly jump 2 years again forward to 2023, when OTP Bank came back with a detailed specification of how to feed this beast. And Daniel will tell about this.
Yes, we have very high expectations. You can see the kitchen is very crowded. These are the spices and the recipes. And the spices in this term are the variables and the connections, while the recipes are the web services and the custom logics. And what we really wanted to have valid decision campaigns here. So we have over 100 decision flows with database connections, and we wanted to have these same connections. So if just only one out of them would go wrong, then our dish would have a different taste, and we didn't want it. Joel just mentioned these Groovy enhancements. So some of you who already use RTDM knows that we could add different SAS processes with different languages. We chose Groovy, and we created tons of these Groovy scripts. So just to give you an example, there were only a table inner join in the RTDM, but we could not make a left or a right join with that. So we wrote it in Groovy. Of course, we could make it in Python or in DS2 as well, but we didn't want to recreate everything, as these Groovy codes were in thousands of, or not thousands, but at least hundreds of decision flows. So we wanted to have the same logic and the ID as well. And of course, the validation. So same variable names, same lengths, it was very important. And that was why we wanted to have these flows without variable differences. And last but not least, to have run and deployable flows in RTDM, mid, and engine server, as well as in the Viya, SAS, and MES. Just to give you another cooking example, is just when you try to make your dish in an old oven and try to make the same dish in a fancy new high induction cooker, you would like to have the same taste, but just with different technology. That's what we wanted to have with this valid decision campaigns. As you can see, our orders there are a lot. So orders are flying in and the meals are going out from our kitchen, and we didn't want to interfere this incoming and outgoing traffic. And it was very important because I've just mentioned we have free front ends, lots of requests are coming from them, and in this case we wanted to answer them in the same way as we did before. So we wanted to have the same web service results as it was in SAS 9.4 and in SAS Viya ID. Why? Because we wanted to have a seamless integration. We didn't want to make them to change any line or in their codes. And at the end, as you will see, we could do that. And last but not least, the performance issues that I've just also mentioned. Lots of database calls, lots of embedded logics. Our performance is a very important part in the system. And with the new one, we didn't want to have a slower system. Of course, Faster can be every time good and better, but at least the same performance was expected from Viya ID as well after the migration. And let's see the kitchen tools. So these are those things what only our staff sees every day. And who are they? Of course, the developers. But just imagine a chef is going to the kitchen and just seeing that the pans are missing, the knives are moved, and probably a blender is instead of where the oven was. Of course, it will be very hard to work, and it will be a nightmare or a madness for them. So we wanted to create a system after the migration where they could use everything. Almost everything is in the same place, of course, with new innovations, but we wanted to have them to be comfortable with this new ID system. And that's why, at the beginning, we had to minimize the node numbers. And why? Because at the beginning of this migration tool, unfortunately, in SAS Viya, some unnecessary nodes were created, and it caused a totally unreadable decision flow. And as you know, RTDM and Viya ID are also low-code, no-code with full-code technologies, where the readability of these nodes and these web services are quite important. That's why we wanted to minimize the node numbers in order to be even more maintainable. And the same functions and tools. I gave you an example of this table in the drawing. It was a built-in RTDM function, but unfortunately it was not built in the Viya ID. But we wanted to use it because it was also embedded in many flows, and we didn't want to change that. So we wanted to have really the same functions, the same tools to give it to the developers. And last but not least, you can see at the bottom of the slide, decision flow from our old system. The details are not so important, but as you can see, it is structured and can be easily readable. This is what we wanted to achieve also in Viya ID in order to give the developers almost the same feeling to be able to maintain the system further on.
Of course, we wanted to fulfill all the requirements. So when the official version of the migration tool based on the community version was published on SAS GitHub, our chances for a successful POC skyrocketed, but this wasn't enough. A few things were still missing. So we joined forces. I was focusing on ensuring that the enhanced migration tool is able to generate ready-to-use, optimized decisions with feature parity, while also new architectural components were created.
Yes, new one was created, and it's not me in glasses on the right, but he's one of our colleagues. He's Csaba Márkus, and we wanted to have a dedicated spot for him because he did a lot of job in this, and he's the best coder we ever met. And he did the Groovy engine and the Apache Camel proxy, what Jolt has already told about. But what is Groovy engine? So those Groovy scripts that enhanced our RTDM functions are a standalone Groovy engine, so it's not part of the SAS Viya platform. It connects to Viya REST services, and in this case we can further use our Groovy scripts. And the Apache Camel proxy, which is a bridge between the front end and the back end system, and it helps us to convert the SOAP request to REST request and vice versa. Because at the beginning when our system started, SOAP protocol was chosen as the communication, and but it's also a fact that SAS Viya is REST native, so somehow we have to solve this problem in order to have the seamless integration with our front ends.
If you are more interested in the architecture and time allows, then I have some spare slides in the end. But during our migration project, we focused on the migration of these specific components. So the data processes were converted into SQL code files. The calculated variables were converted into DS2 code files to be able to minimize the number of nodes that we use. For Groovy SAS processes, we created a Python code that makes an API call to the Groovy engine. Branches were converted into branches with some optimization logic for a linear graph. Business rules weren't converted into rule sets in ID, but we just simply took the rule flow code from RTDM and put it into a DS2 code node. The same is true for modals, And in case of DS2 SAS processes, we haven't changed our habit. But now let's see what the migration process looks like. So the first step is that we have to export the decision campaign from RTDM. That can be done with one command. Then we have to run the migration tool to load this decision into ID. That can be done with another command. And then we have to test it. And since there are so many differences between the two systems, it can be necessary to tweak the generated code a little bit. It can be done with overriding calculated variable expressions or adding custom functions. But all in all, that's a simple process. If the migrated decisions are the dishes, then the migration tool is the chef. And it's a pretty quick one. And let's see how quick it is. So let's start with a small bite from the chef. It's a very simple decision campaign in RTDM, and even the migrated decision contains only 4 nodes and 1 calculated variables. Out of curiosity, I tried to reproduce that manually in ID, rebuild this decision, and it took me 29 minutes. But for our migration tool, it took only 30 seconds. But let's see something more complex. An appetizer with 19 nodes and 12 calculated variables. I haven't tried it to reproduce myself, but I'm pretty sure it cannot be done in 2 minutes. Because that's exactly how long it took for the migration tool to generate this decision in ID. But I agree, that's not complex enough. Let's go bigger to our soup, which contains 80 nodes and 160 calculated variables. And it also comes with a specific cross-bench optimization for easier digestibility. Yeah, so I haven't tried it again myself, but I would say that if you are experienced in migration, manual migration, and RTD in developing in ID, it would take you a few days to recreate that node that is fully working and runnable. But for our tool, it took only 7 minutes. And the generated node is runnable, valid, and no further actions are needed for that. And you haven't even seen our main course yet. It contains 165 nodes and 20 calculated variables. It must be a Godzilla steak. And it is ready within 8 minutes. And it is not medium rare, it is well done. And the cherry on top, a wedding cake. With 202 nodes and 85 calculated variables. And how long does it take? You won't guess it because it takes only 5 minutes. At this point, I would say our migration chef deserves at least 3 Michelin stars.
At least 3 of them. And I was just thinking about why we created flows with 200 nodes, but probably it's the topic of another presentation. So let's see our success metrics, how we defined the success. Of course, we made lots of testings, also automated tests in the backend side and manual tests on the front-end side. And we, based on our developers' experience, we we asked them to check whether they can maintain the system further on. And why? Because we wanted to minimize the learning curve. So we had very senior developers, and we didn't want to lose the knowledge. Of course, they have lots of domain-specific knowledge and also SAS-specific knowledge, but we wanted to have almost the same by using ID, as well as just they used it in RTDM. So at the end, it seems that it was a very successful proof of concept because we had valid decision campaigns, our web services are consistent, and the developer said that they could further develop those web services, so maintainability was also fulfilled. And let's see what are the key takeaways. So at the beginning you saw these 2 endpoints of our journey, but now we have something in the middle, the bridge, which is the RTDM to ID migration tool, which emerged. And it really helped us because with this very quick migration, what Joel just showed to you, we can spare a lot of significant time, and it didn't have any negative impact on our productivity. And the whole transition was very smooth because the front ends didn't have to change a line in their codes. So it was a great success.
And what is the future potential of this migration tool? Our quick migration chef can work in any kitchen. So this is industry independent. It can used for any RTDM to ID migration. If you haven't seen your components in the ingredients list, then chances are that after a proper analysis, the existing migration framework can be extended with those node types as well. So in one word, the migration tool is reusable. And yeah, I tried to make a few jokes today, but truly it's a real honor to me that, it's a real honor to me that an idea I had years ago became a real and working migration tool officially published by SAS, and also that I'm now standing here and telling you this story alongside Daniel.
Yes, we really made lots of jokes and with this analogy of the cooking, but there's also a key message, I think, instead of that, this proof of concept was very successful, that you all know we are living in the ages of AI where we are sometimes missing very good use cases. But I think that with this project, we could show that real intelligence can achieve wonderful things as well. We just need a dedicated colleague like Zsolt, and we need a software like SAS where we can deep dive into the codes and we can really analyze the platform. So with the help of these colleagues, with Zsolt and with Josh, we could really did a very fascinating job. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, and if I see the lunchtime is coming, I'm getting hungry, but maybe now you have an appetite for rebuilding your kitchen. But if you are hesitating, we are happy to answer questions.
Thanks for the presentation. How often do you experience the downtime in the previous platform versus the intelligent decision?
It was just a proof of concept, we have to add. So we are still using RTDM, so I cannot tell you a correct answer for that.
Hi. I have a lot of questions, but one question, in which Viya version do you migrate this PLC, or did this PLC?
It was done in Viya 4.
Viya 4, and running on CTR runtime. Okay, I am correct?
On mass.
On mass?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Hey, I'm Sid from Ford Motor Credit Company. We're in the same journey, and so one question that I have is the SOAP to REST, right? How has your consumers reacted, because it's a bigger change for them from SOAP web services to REST web services, right? And one follow-up question to that is, do we have a Swagger can be exposed to the REST web services so that it's easy for the consumers to start consuming those REST services?
Our goal was not to have any effect on the callers. So that's why we put a new component into this, Apache Camel, and this does a SOAP REST transformation. So the front ends are calling the same way as earlier, and this Camel transforms it to REST, and it passes to Viya, and it goes back, the answer goes back through Camel, and the front ends or any calling system doesn't experience anything from this change. So it is covering this change, this Camel. This is a custom component that we put it here.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for the presentation. Just a quick question. In the POC that you guys did, with the decision campaigns that you have in RTDM, did you guys use some decision treatment campaigns as well, or subflows? So it's a decision campaign calling another decision campaign?
Yes, subflows were used. Treatments were not. So treatments is not used in OTP Bank. So, but other components are used. Yeah.
And the subflows are also migrated in the same process as the.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, earlier. So how a subflow call looks currently in OTP currently. So we are not using the built-in subflows, but we are making a Groovy process for calling an API call as a subflow. So it was easy for us. We used the Groovy engine. So because of some
more independent in this case.
Yeah, because we made them independent like this case, and yeah, that's what.
So you first migrated the lowest level.
Yeah.
And then you go up until the first that is being called from the front end.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes.
But a subflow could be migrated. I mean, if you are using the subflow feature of RTDM, then the same logic could be applied to this as well. So in the migration framework, it could be easily put in.
Okay, and I'm sorry, one last question. How can we have access to the migration tool if we can test on a control environment or something like that?
Yeah, the migration tool itself is published on SAS GitHub. So I think it is called RTDM2 ID migration tool. It is there. Currently, those enhancements that we did during this POC is not included into that yet. It is under discussion that it will be there. But currently, that version is there, which is based on the community version that was made earlier. It is not 100% covering everything that we said, but I think 90% of it covers. But some feature enhancements that we added to it is not there yet. But you can search for that on SAS GitHub.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Hey, so I really like the analogy of how you were explaining this to a kitchen, right? Specifically going on to those examples, you spoke about 200 odd nodes for one of the last examples. How do you manage that chaos? Like, there has to be some interdependency between those 200 plus nodes. How do you manage chaos? What if one goes down? Who takes the load and who does all the processing kind of stuff?
From this perspective, these nodes, okay, let's go back a quick. Okay, just sorry. So this is just a node for one decision campaign. So this is, this contains the logic of the decision campaign. So this whole thing with 202 nodes, this is one decision campaign. So this is the UI of the ID. So here, there is a logic between these nodes. That is not every 202 is a distinct node, but there are some pre and post processing between the nodes. So it has a kind of well-structured logic. It can be easily overseen. But of course, between the APIs, we have 2,700 APIs, web services. As with this process, with this mass setup, it was deployed to mass, the whole system is one. But of course, if we have moved to production, then we should have thought about to move it into SAS container runtime, where maybe every web service could be a container, and which allows us a better availability, and we could have a better handling of these disruptions and these kind of things, but we haven't moved to that part during this POC. So currently everything was deployed to mass, where the whole system is either working or not.
Well, thank you so much for your questions. I think we've got some really good interaction with the audience, so thank you so much. So with that, I would love for you guys to give your feedback in the app. You can go into the session for today. But yeah, I'd really love for us all to just give a huge and warm applause for Daniel and for Zolt for their time for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.